I am your host, Reverend Patrina White McClure. I am here excited about our very, very, very special guest, but we will get to her in just about 35, 40 seconds. But I want to remind you that WCEG Network is your 501c3 nonprofit community radio station. It reaches globally, so we reach out to the global community. But if you want to sow a seed into fertile ground, please give us a call at 404-490-8646, or you can follow us at WCEG Network on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and whatever other social media platforms that are out there to contact us so that we can connect you with your desire to continue on the efforts of this network. We have something for everyone on WCEG Network. And without further ado, I want to introduce our guest. She's doesn't really need an introduction. She's a public servant, so many of us know her for the great and worthy causes that she stands up for. But here we have today with us is the District 5 Congressional Candidate, Valencia Stovall. Welcome, Honorable Stovall.
Thank you so much, Reverend McClure or Reverend Patrina. I appreciate the opportunity to sit in with you and your audience today.
Oh, thank you for being with us. I know that a lot of people within the faith community don't really see their impact into politics, but we all have a commitment to it, whether we want to recognize it or not, or are aware of it or not, to what is going on in America's politics. Can you explain that to our audience?
Yes, so everything that we do in our daily lives are affected by policies. And those are the individuals that results back to the individuals that we actually elect. Even, I have to vote as well, even though I'm running for office. And so whether it's your health care, whether it's how you able to go back and forth to work, what happens on your job, what happens with your family, even what happens in your place of worship. All of it is determined by policies and by those individuals that you elect.
Thank you so much for that. So if we're paying taxes, we are contributing to the cause, whether we want to or not.
Correct.
All right. So how did you end up throwing your hat back into politics here in Georgia?
Yeah, so I served as an 8-year legislator, and during that time, passed over a dozen bills that were actually signed into law. And then I decided to leave office. I ran for U.S. Senate 2 years ago, and then after that race, I just still, was active in the community. And then I was approached several times. A lot of supporters been asking me to get back into, the elected position. And so they approached me and asked me to please consider to run, for this Congressional District 5. And they said, we have a deficit in leadership in Congress when it comes to representation in Georgia. And they looked at my past record of my community service as a business owner, and then, of course, as a legislator, and asked me to consider running in the Democratic primary.
Awesome. Somebody's looking. We never know it until they say it. I say it all the time. We always have an audience. It's not until they make themselves known that we understand that we do. And so what are your top 3 agenda items you want to address in District 5?
Okay. Yeah, they're very simple. I call them the 3 B's: the buck, the book, and the ballot. And so those are phrases I first heard from the late Mayor Maynard Jackson, who was the first African-American mayor of the city of Atlanta and of any southern city. And during that time, my dad Valencia Stovall served as his community liaison for both terms of office. So, being able to listen to him talk and all of the great work he did in the community and for businesses really was the the catalyst for me utilizing the 3 Bs, which I used even in my first election back in 2012. So the buck is dealing with economic rejuvenation. And so you're looking at, our small businesses have really been hurt a whole lot with the pandemic, and they need a lot more boost to make sure that they're able to survive. Being that small business make up about 60% of businesses here in America. And when you look at our communities, they're the ones that are doing majority of the hiring in our communities and providing services and products. So we have to make sure that they are stabilized. Our healthcare, workforce shortages in healthcare, workforce shortages in other industries, justice reform, affordable housing, our senior citizens who, suffered a whole lot during COVID, and our veterans as well, and people with disabilities. So that falls up under the buck. The next one is the book, which is Reimagining Education. So our education system already was not performing or doing as well as it should have, which means it was not student-centered. And so this is an opportunity now, because everything with COVID has really been broken all the systems down. You've seen a lot of other things, even talking about in healthcare, but we've done some changes in how we deliver healthcare that we never thought about doing in the past. So we have to do that same thing for education. And it has to be student-centered, because children learn on different levels. And the system that we have in place now is just not working. So being able to bring those educators, the business, everyone to the table to talk about what the future of education should look like here in Georgia, and using this as a platform for across the United States. Our apprenticeship programs, we definitely need more of those, because students, like, again, they learn in different areas. And most important to me is once that child turns 18, they're able to be productive citizens. And they can't do that unless they have a good foundation in education. And the last B is voter education. We talked early on, starting off with your program about policies and how they affect us every day. And so if you're not educated as a voter, then you're doing a disservice to yourself and to your family and to future generations. Because if you don't understand what is the responsibility of the elected official that you are actually voting for, then you don't know how to hold that person accountable. And so as a result, you feel, why should I go and vote? Because they're not listening to me. Well, there's a reason why they're not listening to you, because you're not empowered. You have not been empowered to make sure that person that you're voting for or even supporting is making sure that they're looking at what your needs are and being accountable to you and the community who actually elected them.
All right. So on that last note, the ballot, we do that by voting, getting out and making our voices heard. But how do we determine what the agenda items are? Because there continues to feel like, it doesn't mean that it's there, but a lot of us feel like there's a chasm or a void between the politician and the public. And we a lot of times don't feel like, outside of our votes speaking for us, that we can't contribute anything towards the agenda items. So who determines the agenda items that are discussed?
Well, there are two ways to answer that. One is the people decide, and then you have party leadership that decides. And so that kind of results back to the business community deciding. And so what you do is you have to find that balance between the corporate side of the issues and then the people side of the issues. And so when you're looking at your candidate, you have to find someone that's able to balance both sides. Because if not, then you're going to have one side, if it's leaning more towards the corporate side, then all of those legislation and bills and policies that you see in place are going to be more favorable on that side. And then if you have a person that's only leaning towards the social side, which is out with the people side, then you don't have the money that's needed to be able to help support those nonprofits that we have in our community that are doing great work. You won't have all those other issues. You won't be able to fund it because you're only looking at the social side of it. And so you have to have a balance. And that's one of the things I've been able to do during my 8 years as a legislator, because I started off in community service and serving my community. So, and then also our family had a business, Stovall's T-shirts, for many years. And we also had a contract at the Georgia Dome. We were the first African-American company to have a joint venture partnership. And that was through Mayor Maynard Jackson's tenure, when he established the minority participation program. And so being able to know the business side and also know the social side, that's what makes me the best balanced candidate that's in the race.
Awesome. And you said a lot there, because one of the issues that came up to mind is that one about gun control in America. So we know that the National Rifle Association, or NRA, they have their money into a whole lot of folks' pockets. A lot of corporations whom we frequent, we got their products in all of our houses. So then you really wonder, can we really get a hold of this issue if we continue to buy their products, but they continue to have the out of balance issue of putting money into pockets? Am I hitting it a little bit in the box there?
Yeah, you do, because like I said, you're not gonna hit everybody's want list 100%. And so that's when you ask about voters being educated, is finding that balance. Okay, I might not agree with this candidate on this, but the part I do agree with, is it more or greater in what I agree with them on than what I disagree with them on? And then that way you're able to have a conversation. And what usually happens a lot of times, my dad always say the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so you have a small group, which are those who actually come out to vote, which is such a small number, but they're making a decision for the masses. And so when you have just a few making decisions for the masses, then that the focus point is used on that small amount. But that doesn't mean that the small amount is really taking consideration of the masses. And so that's why voter education is so important. And like you said earlier, even with the whole gun control, is being able to know, okay, yes, I believe in our amendment rights of being able to bear arms. But with that, there are some bad actors that are out there that have not, taken that seriously, as well as honoring people's right to be able to have bear arms, but also to honor the right of life. And so you have to have policies in place to make sure those people who are not responsible know that there's a law. That's why we have laws in the United States, because of the bad actors, not for the people who doing what they're supposed to do. It's for the ones who don't want to do what they're supposed to do.
Right. And so hence them eliminating the need to collect funds for people who want to register for guns, because they're saying that the ones that are not the bad actors are willing to do the right thing, whereas the bad actors are the ones that are going to still be held accountable to the laws on the books for any illegal gun usage. And you don't have to worry about those citizens who honored the law going out of character or being out of balance, if you will, in their gun ownership.
Right. And
Okay.
so, so you're definitely on track with that, with the whole thought process. And like I said, it's not, sometimes you can get wrapped up in, oh, they want to take my guns away. It has nothing to do with taking the guns away. It's about responsibility. And we've seen so many cases of young people getting their hands on guns, whether they're stealing it or whether they're, utilizing or going in and getting it from their parents or somebody else. And then it ends up in a fatal situation that those things could have been prevented. And that's why you have to have policies in place for that, to make, like I said, those who don't want to do right, or those who didn't see the need of it until after the accident, that's too late. A life has been lost when it could have been prevented. Those kids are gone. And so who knows who they were supposed to be in, but their lives were cut short. And then the whole family suffers as well. The person who actually, released the gun and the bullet, and then the person who was responsible for making sure that gun was not supposed to get in the hands of that child.
Right. I was devastated. I think there were 2 or 3 children who were shot, I think just yesterday, in the metro Atlanta area with unsecured guns. And, still this problem continues to exist, that people don't want to do what they need to do to keep those guns out of children's hands. And I'm not trying to focus solely on that issue, the gun control, because there are many others. But I'm assuming that more laws are being instituted or started, if you will, to hold those people accountable for those particular now crimes.
Mhm.
So,
Yes. And like I said, it still goes back to education and educating the people, and you know, that's a lot. That's what you have, and it has to be continuous. It can't be because this incident happened, we're gonna talk about it. It has to be something that's continued, just like reading. You got to continue to read. And so you don't just stop today and say, well, okay, I'm not gonna read till 3 months later. No, you have to be continuous with it.
and that's the thing about learning. Learning is continuous, you know, and so we always like to think we arrive somewhere, but you don't actually arrive. You just reach a certain point, and then you manage the responsibilities within the scope of that position. And with
Right.
that being said, how do we continue to get the message out to the voter of their responsibility, how this continues? You don't just vote at election time. You have to stay in tune with what's being said on Capitol Hill.
Yes. And so I think that places like WCEG and other platforms like this, you know, do an outstanding job with making sure that the community is informed. Because the reality is, you know, people are working, they have other situations that are going on that kind of take precedence a whole lot. But if we can be able to educate them on some of those issues and situations that's taking precedence over you are all related back to policy. And so if better policies were in place, then you having to work 2 jobs would not be an issue. You having to work 2 jobs. You could just work 1 job and have a livable wage so that you can be able to take care of your family. If there was an issue about, well, you know, I'm not able to, you know, buy enough food or healthy food, you know, I have to go back and forth to the doctor. Look at the cost of prescription drugs. Look at, you know, being able to have affordable health care. And for those who don't fall up under being able to have health care because they don't make enough money to be able to even participate in the Affordable Care Act program. So those are issues, but they are all related back to policies. So I think starting with, you know, programs like WCEG, you know, our faith-based community, because you have to look at trusted areas. So our faith-based community is a trusted area where people, if the pastor or the deacons and ministers, all of them are saying one thing, those parishioners or those members are going to listen. And so being able to make sure we're educating the leaders of all of these different organizations is very important. So wherever people are, that's what we need to make sure that those leaders of those organizations or situations, whether it's even on the job, sometimes you have employers that we can be able to educate, and they can be able to send the information out to their employees about how these policies affect them, even on with a business. For example, if there's a wrong policy that's in place that prevents that business from growing, then they're limited on how many employees they can actually hire. And so sometimes they may need to even lay some of them off, or even they get fired. But that comes from one particular policy that was in place that prevented them from doing something else to grow their business. So I think if we're able to change the narrative of how we educate, and not so much about people died for your right to vote, we know that, but what else beyond that, especially for our younger generation, because there's so many years in between the civil rights, you know, they only know it as I'm reading in a book. My generation, I know it from my dad, who's 80. So him and my mom were able to tell us, hey, this is what happened. But now you think about my children, my children's children, they're so far removed from it actually being reality to them that we have to use another type of platform, another way to distribute that information and let them know how important policies are and the importance of voting.
So are you running an all-out campaign for that group, like on Instagram or Snapchat, all those places that the young adults congregate to? Because so many of them don't even watch the news. Mm-hmm. So other than us going to where they are to get them the information, they don't really know what's really happening there in this, like, if you will, mesmerized state that certain things aren't occurring, and they need to snap out of it.
Yes. Yeah, so we're using all the social media platforms, and a lot of it still goes back to word of mouth, because that's actually what social media is. It's according to who's on, how many followers they have, and what they're saying. So that word of mouth always worked then in the past, and it still works now, just in a different platform or different setup. So yes, we're using all of that to kind of help educate them on the importance of it, and then being able to make it relevant to them, to those things that are important to them. And so when you're able to make it relevant to them, and said, hey, the music you listen to, that's all about policy and what can be done, what cannot be done. The studios y'all are going into to record your music, if there's a policy that says that you can't record it, or you only can do this much, that's a policy, so it affects you. You like to go buy clothing and all of that. If they get to the point where, like, we're dealing with inflation now, when it gets too high, then you're not gonna be able to purchase those shoes, those clothing, and all of that. Well, who makes that decision? Where it just don't just arbitrarily happen. There are individuals that you have elected or not elected who are making that decision. So when you want to be a part of being the ones who help elect that person, instead of just sitting on the side, and now you having to deal with 2 years or 4 years or 6 years of whatever it is that their particular platform or things that they're going to be fighting for.
Hence the condition of the world today. I thought about a few things as you talked about, though, going to address the young people with the issues that concern them. Are there any other classes dedicated to them, other than just going out there? Do you have representatives of those particular age groups connecting with those people on your behalf?
Yes, so I've my millenniums, and I have do a lot of work in volunteer work in middle schools, who, even though they're not old enough to vote, but they have parents who are old enough to vote, and they have family members. And a lot of times, with those young people, they ask a lot of questions. And so being able to help them to understand at an early age to me, is twofold. You're helping them to educate their parents, but also you're now working on the future voter. Because even though they're in middle school, in a couple of years, they're going to be eligible to vote. And so the more we start younger at educating them about voter empowerment, then the better we're going to see policies in the future.
Awesome. And I just want to focus on the social media side for an extra few seconds. I was listening to the interview with the Kardashians, and they said how Kylie Jenner became a millionaire not because she advertised her product on billboards or anything. She used social media. So I totally get what you're saying, a billionaire. But anyway, that's another story. But how do our listeners on Church Biz follow you? Because I love your approach to politics. You make it accessible, like it's touchable, that we can actually do this. So how do our listeners get in touch with you and even possibly volunteer with your campaign?
Okay, then they can go to gostovall.com. That's GOSTOVALL.com. And on there, you can volunteer. You can also donate. So any amount is most appreciative, so we can make sure we're getting the word out. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Valencia Stovall. And that's VALENCIASTOVALL. And they can be able to follow all the things that we're doing during the campaign as well. And one last thing, we actually have a movie screening, a free movie screening that we're sponsoring. It'll be virtual, and it's called Miss Virginia. And so this particular movie is about a single parent who struggled with it, trying to make sure her 15-year-old son has the best education. And she actually lived in Washington, D.C. This is a true story. And she had to fight the policies. And she kept fighting until she was able to get the policies changed to allow her son to be able to enroll in a different school setting, which happened in this case happened to be a private school, but it was because the traditional public schools were not serving her on the level where she felt her son should be able to get education. And so it's a very good movie. They can go to the website and sign up and register to be able to receive the link. And it'll be April the 24th at 4 p.m.
Awesome, awesome. I hope a lot of people take advantage of that. And if I can, even though that's the anniversary day, I will be watching. But I do appreciate you for being a part of our show. Are there any parting words that you have besides the announcement of Miss Virginia?
Yes, thank you again, WCEG and Reverend Patrina, for this opportunity. I am Valencia Stovall, a mother of two, a native of Atlanta, and I want to be able to serve you in U.S. Congress. The 3 B's, the book, and the ballot. It's very simple. Every issue that we have actually falls up under those three topics. I've talked about the 8-30-30, 8 years as a legislator, 30 years as a small business owner, and 30 years as a community servant. So make sure you check out my website, gostovall.com.
Awesome. I congratulate you on taking up the mantle of getting into good trouble. And I am looking forward to hearing more from you about what you are doing and seeing some movement in some areas that we haven't been able to see before, So I think that's pretty awesome that somebody was looking at you and thought you could represent the people person that you are, the public servant that you are, and do something on their behalf. So congratulations for that. Thanks again for being a part of our show. I know that we're at the end of our time here, but at your request, we'll just be doing a momentary inspirational message at which our Church Biz listeners, they can begin to funnel in a couple of questions if they have them. And I know that you probably have to go. Early voting starts May 2nd through May 23rd. We do want to let everybody know that early voting is May 2nd through May 23rd. And then is that May 24th, the actual voting day?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so everybody do what you can to make your voice known. Nobody's going to know what you were thinking or how you feel if you don't put the necessary work towards voting for Valencia Stovall. Primary election is Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. So we have from May 2nd through May 23rd for early voting. There have been a lot of redistricting to try to keep the nominees that actually help represent people out of office, because those who have the business agenda want to get into office and then tell us how to live. But anyway, everybody get out there, do your part. If you can't say it, if you don't say it with your vote, then shut up. That's the only thing I can say about that. So vote or shut up. Check your voting and your polling locations before the day of election. A lot of that has changed intentionally to try to discourage voters from going out. They want you to become so discouraged that you'll say, forget it, it's too much work. But this life that we live, it takes a lot of work to live. So don't discredit your voice in this situation. That is intentional effort to discourage you, to keep you from feeling like your vote really will make a difference, because it does. That's why they do what they do. Valencia's website, you can go to that, and that's gostovall.com for all of the voting information. It will tell you what areas District 5 covers, and you're getting ready to add?
Yeah. Yes, I was getting ready to say the Secretary of State actually has a website that anyone who's registered can actually go to that website to find out your polling location and what is your new district number, because some people may still be in Congressional District 5, or it may have changed, and even your state elected for your House and Senate, and also for some school board members are running, some city council are running. So all of those, if you go to MVP, which is my voter page, you can Google my voter page and it'll come up. But the actual website is www.mvp.sos.ga.gov. So mvp.sos.ga.gov. And all of that, if you miss some of it, just Google my voter page and it'll come up, and you'll put your first initial in, your last name, your date of birth, and the county which you were registered. And then it'll pull up a profile. And from there, you could actually fill out your, if you want to do absentee ballot, you need to put in the application first, and then your local registrar's office will send you the ballot in the mail. But all that information is on there where you can be able to download it, print it out, and you can either fax it in or you can mail your application back in. And it also will show your early voting locations once they're posted up.
So in other words, it's more than us just going to the vote. We need to be responsible for the whole gamut of being a voter, finding out in advance where your voter or your polling location is and all that you have to do to register. Is it also too late to register to vote?
No, they still have time to register for the May election. I don't have that date, but it's still time for them to register if they have not. And even if you have moved, you can actually still go to that website and change your address. And so you want to make sure that you go ahead and do that right away so that you can be able to vote in the primary election. And that's very, very important, this primary, because the primary election determines who's going to be that party's nominee for the general election that'll be held in November. And so you have a lot of people that are on the ballot. And if you don't vote, like I said earlier, only the small number of people who vote are determining who's going to be your representative in whatever position that they're elected in.
Awesome. Thank you for that tip there. Everybody do your part. Do your part. Only 15 days prior to election is the registration. We just got that information in. You can register up to 15 days before the election to cast your vote, to make your voice heard. So do your part, everybody. All of us have a responsibility. We are all impacted by all the decisions, whether it's how much taxes you pay on your groceries, gas, in your county, property taxes, all the way to the condition and the quality of the roads you drive on, all the resources made to your community. How can you not see that you participate or contribute towards American politics? In addition, you are a citizen, so you're required to pay taxes. You are already participating. Why not maximize your impact in going out to vote and register prior to? All right, applications must be postmarked by the 5th day before a primary. So you have time, get out there, register to vote, get your voice out there. Everyone has a voice. And we know that everyone has a voice because people like to argue. People, there's a reason why people are shooting people up in the streets. I hate to use that as an analogy, but it is because everybody wants to be heard. But we have to do what it takes to be heard the right way and a beneficial way, not to just you, but to everyone who is impacted by your vote. So this is a part of citizenship of Americans to go out and vote. And here in Georgia, it's no less. This is a huge thing. This is a big election coming up, because they have worked the last 2 years to redistrict, to change some things, to make you ineligible, not only to discourage you from voting, but to make you ineligible to vote. And then they have so slanted the voter districts so that their desired candidates will get in, because the people on the low were the ones that spoke out during the presidential election, and the powers that be don't like that. And so what they're doing is to garner the few votes that they have and try to shift the lines, if you will, so that their voices can be heard. I know that's made you kind of frustrated, hasn't it? Honorable Stovall, I'm gonna call you that.
Yeah, the thing about it that everyone should understand with politics is whoever's in charge is going to make it favorable for them. When the Democrats were in charge in Georgia for a long time, it was favorable for them. And then you heard the Republicans, oh, you all are moving the lines, this and that. And now the Republicans are in charge and they're making it favorable for them. And that's just how politics works. So, knowing that, you still need to make sure that your voices are heard. And you can't do that by being silent. That means participating in your community organizations when they're having meetings, because communities are meeting and they're making decisions on what the growth of that community is going to look like. And if you decide, well, I'm not going to go to the meeting, and then you see a whole area where it's being gentrified or it's being growth is coming, and you say, wait a minute, how did they use that small piece of land and now I see 50 or 100 units on there? Well, guess what? That's going to impact your community, especially starting with traffic infrastructure. If you already were having problems with your streets and the sewage and all of that, that's still policy. Somebody had to make a decision to allow for those builders to come into that particular community. So why not be at the table in the beginning? If it is going to come, these are some things we want to happen. Okay, we want a certain amount of money set aside for our improvement project that we're doing for our young people. We want money set aside for this. And so that's the time to ask when they first come to the table, not once you start seeing the construction built, but that only happens when you're involved and you're being active in your community where you live.
I love that you brought that point out, because it's not until after the people start seeing the groundbreaking that they realize that a shift has occurred. But usually that shift takes years in advance. So how, besides us casting our vote, how are we able to get to those tables, if you will, and be a part of the conversation?
Well, each community, in effect, majority of them have community organizations, and they either usually are formed by people that live in that community. And so I know in the city of Atlanta, they have neighborhood planning units. And so you have individual community groups that meet, and then they all meet as a totality together for the neighborhood planning units. And they usually have meetings monthly. And so with that, they take whatever the recommendations are from the individual communities, and that's what they present to the city of Atlanta when it comes down to zoning. And one of the requirements with zoning is that they have to have some type of recommendation from that local community. And if you don't have like if you stay outside the city of Atlanta, you may stay in the cab, or you stay in East Point or in Hateville or College Park, then you need to find out what is that community group, and then how is that how are the voices of that community group heard? And if they don't have a structure like Atlanta, you can make that recommendation to your elected official that they need to include that into the city council recommendations that they're making, and make it a part of the rules for that particular city or county. That way, you know that every time a growth is happening in your community, you know about it in advance, because guess what? They have to come to that community group before anything is done. And then you also have that the different cities and counties, they have different boards that you can be appointed to by your elected official. That's why it's important to stay in contact with your elected officials. You have economic development boards that determine what the growth economically is going to be for your community. You have zoning review boards. Those are the ones that decide what zoning is going to stay in place. And so right now you might have a residential area, and you might have it next to an industrial or commercial area, where that zoning review board would determine whether they're going to take a part of that residential away and add more commercial to it, or whether vice versa. But those are individuals making those decisions, and a lot of times you don't know about those decisions that are being made. So there are a lot of opportunities, and you can, and those meetings are open to the public. So you don't have to be a special person with a title to go to those meetings, and they give you public comment time to be able to say, hey, I agree or I don't agree, or please explain to me, what does this mean for my community? So that's another way of voter empowerment. So it's not just going to the polls to vote, but having education before you even get to the time for voting. Because say, for instance, you have an elected official that every time they're not voting with the community, but you don't know that because you're not going to the community meetings to find out what's going on. Well, that means that person needs to receive that pink slip to go home because they're not there for the people. And so you want someone that's going to be committed, that's going to be accessible and solution driven. And those are the types of leaders that when you're looking at who you're going to vote for, those are how you determine. And you have a little checklist, but you can't have a checklist if you're not involved.
I love that you said all of that, because the bottom line is, if we want to know, we have to come out of our comfort zones, head up to our city halls or city council members or meetings, and find out what's going on. And then that's when we can make our voices heard, because they do give you an opportunity to speak. I've been to some in where I live and some outside of where I live. And I want to get back to doing that, because it is a good way to find out what is actually being said about your area. There are conversations going on, and if we don't take the initiative to go and find out what is being said, all kinds of happenings will be going on, if you will, in your community, like in the 30318 zip code, with all these dilapidated houses that are being torn down, being bought up by big business, and buying out all these properties and building those immaculate structures that raises people's taxes, and now they can't afford to pay the taxes on their property and end up losing it. And then big business comes out to buy that up too. But you can call your county elections office to see if your county is participating in the Sunday and Saturday early voting on May 13th and 14th. Call your county elections office to see what those early voting parameters are, or even if they are having them. Some are trying to eliminate that because they do know that most people work during the day and can't get out to vote without being threatened to lose their jobs during the day, even though there are laws in place that give voters time to vote before and after they go to work. People are still being held accountable at the job for being away. But early voting is May 7th through 8th, and then 13th through 14th, I believe that is. We're getting information in here, so I hope I'm reading that correctly. Oh, those are Saturdays and Sundays that you can still vote early. But again, check your local elections office and go to that mvp.sos.ga.gov site for my voter page. Find out where you're supposed to vote, and just make time, just like you make time to go out and eat for dinner, make time to go out and vote. You know, put your seat at those city council meetings so that you can understand where it is that or what is being said about your community, in your community, by those who want to come in and build up more mega distribution centers, if you will, because they're going all up over here, out here in Douglas County. They're almost everywhere. And so, and new ground is breaking for even more of them. But some of us weren't at the seat to hear the conversations, but it is really interesting. But that small business voice, if you are a small business owner, you need to be at that table too, or send somebody that can represent your company there. You already have to go to get the right types of licensing and zoning for your business, but you also should continue to be a part of the conversation. And then don't forget to go to www.GOSTOVALL.com, and Valencia Stovall has all the information you need regarding her campaign, her talking about the book, and the ballot. That's your slogan, I take it. And I was blessed to be able to have met Maynard Jackson a couple of times, and he was a phenomenal person for those of us who had a chance to interact with him. And he did like memory associations, because my first name is not easy to remember, but he was close. He could tell me when he met me, and he came close to my name. He said, Patrina. And I'm like, whoa, I'll take that as a plus, And so he was just that kind of person. But he made his voice known. He made his impact. And all of us have an audience. Like I said earlier, we can reach out to those we know and go vote.
Yes.
Don't sit at the house. Don't let them tell you you need to stay home and keep your vote to yourself. Go ahead. Let candidate Stovall know that you are in her corner as your congressional representative in Georgia District 5. She has a good trouble agenda. She's experienced. She already knows how to reach over the aisle, if you will, and obtain or garner that bipartisan support on the issues that she represents. She is qualified, more than qualified. So get out there. Those of you in District 5, vote for Valencia Stovall as your congressional or elected official. Put her name on that ballot. Get her in office. What else do you have to do? Okay? She's fighting for you. She knows the conversations. She can make that conversation known to you. You just got to reach out. She can't bring it to you if she doesn't know you exist, but she knows you're out there. You just got to make your presence known so that she can connect with you and bring you in and show you too that you have value and you can be an important component, a constituent of this political landscape. I noticed that she says policies a lot. She doesn't want us to look at governments per se, but it is government, but it's the policies that drive everything that happens in your communities. So do your part. This is a biblical responsibility. God even tells his people, pray for your government leaders. If you read the Bible, you'll find it in the Old and the New Testament. We're called to pray for her, vote for her, and pray. Okay? So you want to act like they say, faith without works. The Bible says that in the book of James. Faith without works is dead. So if you have faith that she's the candidate for you, then put the work to it and then go out and vote, because it's not just going to happen because you prayed. It's just like God always expects of us. He does his part, but then there's a human part. So he'll do what he desires to do, but then he's going to say, hey, we're in relationship here. We got to work together on the same agenda. So get out there and vote, and then get active in your communities. You want to know why they are falling apart and why there is so much gun violence? Maybe because the faith community has been so quiet for so long, too long, that the young people can't even hear what we're saying because of the disconnect. But yet we want to send Valencia out on the front lines and fight for us when we won't fight for ourselves. She can do only but so much, but we all have to get out there with her and do our part. Now, what you do might be different than what I might do. I might have a voice, but you might have the money. If you don't have the time, maybe you can contribute a couple of $100. It's not going to hurt you, especially if you were spending it on big business and buying more bullets or more Big Macs. I'm not knocking those things. I'm just saying, people do what they want to do, but make your desire evident. Get out there, vote, tell somebody about GoStovall.com. Get out there on April 24th on her website and see the movie Miss Virginia, because those subliminal messages still exist today, where we need to do our part and then invite others from the political arena into our situations to help us. Because even Jesus said that those who keep talking will have their needs met. I paraphrased that a little bit, but if you keep on asking, you keep on knocking, eventually the door will be open, but you can't give up. You got to do your part. Vote, participate. If you're paying taxes, vote, participate. Your vote can determine what types of weaponry can be sent over into the Ukraine to help those people. Yes, I understand racial injustices have occurred, but yet and still it was your vote that helped pay, or your lack of voting that helped pay for the military equipment that we're sending over there to help protect those people. The injustices against humanity alone should be enough to motivate you into action. Even those in our own country, we shouldn't have to wait till another Black person is killed unjustly before we can be heard yelling, hollering, and screaming that something should be done, when that decision was impacted by our vote or our lack of voting, that very action that takes place. So you have power in your hands, but you have to exercise it in order for it to take effect. It's not going to just happen because you wish it to. The graveyard is full of ideas that people wished that they had taken opportunity or acted upon. But it's time to do something with your desire other than hold it in your heart. You can talk, but if there is no action, that means nothing. Valencia, would you happen to have any closing remarks? We have 6 minutes left to the show.
Yes, I mean, you touched on a lot of good information and making a lot of good points when it comes to being active, in your community. And like you said, we could talk all day, we could complain, but until we put the action behind it. And, when I think about the congressional district and on the federal level, though, that's where it starts at. And from the federal, it comes down to the state, and then it comes down to the local. And the local is where people are, what touches you the fastest. The state is probably the next level. And of course, the federal is the highest level. And so when you're thinking about leadership, you want someone that's being able to work from the federal down to the state and then down to the local, which is going to touch you and impact you the most and the fastest. When it comes down to a lot of the development, a lot of the programs that can be created or extended. I look at our nonprofits and how they really stepped up during the time of the pandemic, and even so now. But how much more could they have done? Even when we talk about people not returning to work, we talk about after school programs, and then there was such a loss of learning with our young people that we have to create and look at a different way. And parents are saying, hey, I found out, I thought my child was learning, but they weren't learning when they were able to sit at home with them for a year and a half. They really found out where their children were. And so now they're saying, hey, what other options do we have? So we have no other option but to redo or redesign how we're doing education, because if those children are not prepared, they become adults who are not prepared. And then we talk about our taxpayers' money. That's where it's going to go, to those adults that are not prepared. But what if we could turn it around and have it where it's going to those adults who are prepared, and making sure that they are able to live in a nice neighborhood. Everyone wants to live in a nice neighborhood. Well, I would think everyone would.
Right.
You know, you want to be able to drive in a safe community. You want to be able to go to a top-rated restaurant, a top-rated grocery store that's not run down. You shouldn't have to drive 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 miles to get to a nice restaurant, a nice grocery store that's going to look nice when you walk in. You shouldn't have to drive to the northern end of the district just to have the finer things. It should be in your community. But that comes from you having a voice and electing people who understand that whatever's done on the top end needs to be done in the middle and even on the south end. So wherever it is, it needs to be equal around. And then whatever it takes to make sure that those resources get down to where it needs to be. It's just like you have pain in your body. When you're taking that medicine goes supposed to go straight to where the pain is. Where in our communities, there are pain points all over our community. So you have to have someone that understands their pain points, but at the same time, not penalizing those areas that are doing well. We have to all come together, because if you continue to have one area that's not doing well, that's where crime starts to fester, because there's nothing else they can do in the communities where they grew up in. So they're going to move to the communities where there's, nice cars, nice things up there. So let's go up there and take what they have, because I don't have it. So, but what if we start being able to have it where you can have it too, just like they have it, but there's no hope. So we have to bring hope back into our communities, but it comes back to policies and those people that are understanding how those policies are structured and how they can benefit or hurt our communities if they're not the good policies. So a vote for Stovall is a vote for having someone that's accessible, who's bold and solution driven to our issues that we're having, not just in Congressional District 5, but across the state.
Awesome, awesome. I love it. Everybody, we've said enough to let you know that you can be a responsible voter. So do what you can to go out and make sure that you are registered, or if you are registered, you know where you need to go and vote. And then as well, put that action behind it, and then support throughout the year, not just at voter time or time of election, but it's time to be a participating voter. I am your host, Reverend Patrina White McClure. I am so glad that you tuned in with us today as we had our very, very, very special guest, the Honorable Valencia Stovall, who is the 5th District Congressional Candidate here in Georgia. And so we know that something was said to inspire you to get out there and go do it. Make your vote count. Take care and God bless.